Hi everyone, it's Lyra. I decided to make a series of tutorial videos for how to be a good supporter of trans people when you're making visible representations of us. What does that mean? Okay, so if you're an artist and you're making a webcomic, or if you're a filmmaker and you want to make a movie, or if you're a playwright and you want to make a story about us, all that stuff, I say, great! You go for it. But there's a caveat. You need our help. You can't do it without us. Nothing about us without us. So this is both my personal invitation to contact me or any other trans people you know, obviously respecting their boundaries and their limits, because it's not their job to educate you, to be involved. I want to be involved. Even if I don't know you, tell me about what you're doing. I want to be involved. If it's about trans people, I am into it. That being said, obviously my experience is somewhat limited because I'm a trans woman. I don't know anything about being a trans man, and I know very little about being a non-binary trans person. So, I can't really help you with any of that stuff, but I could probably connect you with people who could. So ask me anyway. That being said, I figure that since many of you won't want to or won't have the time or just need a quick little reference or something to share around and spread with people to help raise awareness and all that good stuff, I would make a quick series of tutorials. So without further ado, this is the first installment of my tutorial series on how to be a good supporter of trans people in visible media. Okay. This time, we're going to focus on one specific element that I think gets miscategorized a lot. And really, the conversation needs to be expanded. Understanding needs to be increased. The conversation needs to change, all kinds of stuff. So let's get down to it. Here's what it is. Biological sex. I made a video recently about how biological sex is a social construct. I highly recommend you check it out. I think it's pretty good. So the takeaway for you as someone who's planning on making a visible representation of a trans person, don't talk about how our biological sex is something that's different from our psychological gender. This divide between sex and gender is actually really harmful for a lot of people. You can hypothesize about it. You can have characters talk about it if they do so in a well-researched and informed manner, but don't assert it as a medical fact. In general, don't get medicine involved. They have pretty much gotten it consistently wrong for a very long time. But yeah, let's break it down and let's talk about it a little bit. Some of the issues with biological sex, as we're talking about positive representations of trans people, and what are some good things to talk about instead. So, first and foremost, it's important to understand that trans people are constantly fighting for acceptance, for validity, for our lives. The rate of suicide and murder against trans people is phenomenally high. It's probably higher than any other minority group per capita. I want you to think about that for a second. Higher than any other group. Holy fuck. So, we're at risk, and we need to make sure that representations help advance our cause. One of the most common reasons that people cite for hating trans people and wanting to hurt them and wanting to kill them is that we're not really blank. You know, I'm a trans woman, but I'm not really a woman. I have friends who are trans men, and they're not really men. Yes, we are. We are because biological sex is a social construct. And when you talk about women and men, you're talking about gender. You're talking about a thing that we sort of all co-consciously create together. But you're also talking about a deeply held identity. So, what happens when you talk about biological sex versus psychological gender? You attach this little marker to trans people that says they're not really what they say they are. Oh, sure, their gender is female, but their sex is male, or vice versa. This gives fuel every single time it's said to the people who are trying to destroy us. The trans-exclusive radical feminists who will hunt us down and post horrible, shaming, brutalizing information about us, who will out trans people who have been living stealth in the workplace. These are real threats. They're really dangerous. They can destroy people's lives, sometimes even literally get them killed. We can't keep supporting that conversation. I know it's really popular. I know Time Magazine just did it. I know that's probably how the medical resources you've read did it, but they're wrong. We don't have a biological sex that's different from our gender. We just are what we say we are. If you promote the idea that biological sex is there, not only are you supporting that kind of overt violence, but you're also supporting the social violence where people think, well, maybe you can become biologically female or biologically male if. And then there's all these caveats of how you need to get hormones and you need to get surgery and you need to do all of this stuff before you'll really be legit. This is wrong, both ethically and legally. It's possible for you to become legally recognized as the gender you are without going through any of those treatments. All you really need is to see a doctor who's willing to be on your side. They exist and you can find them if you look. So first of all, it's not even legally accurate that you need any of these things to have your gender be valid. But ethically, it's just completely preposterous. A trans woman is a trans woman, whether she's on hormones or not, whether she's getting surgery or not. And some trans women either can't afford those things or just don't want them. And that doesn't make them any less of a trans woman. Same thing for trans men. Another reason why this is problematic, and I'm not going to get into it in detail, is that it sort of makes it impossible for us to understand what's going on with non-binary trans people. And I'm not a non-binary trans person, so I'm not going to talk about it at length, but I have several non-binary trans friends, people who are neither male nor female, and they're totally cool with that. They're not stuck somewhere in between. That's just what they are. And as long as we keep talking about biological sex, then they can't really use either of the biological sexes. And so it really screws them over and makes the conversation impossible for them. So there's all these reasons why you don't want to talk about biological sex. If you want to have a character, bring it up and then sort of take it to pieces, look at all the problems with it, go for it. But don't just let it stand unchallenged. It needs to be challenged. It's a very dangerous idea. What are some things you can talk about instead? There's a couple of ways you can talk about it. My personal favorite is to talk about people's birth designation. I was designated male at birth. That doesn't mean I am male. That doesn't mean I'm biologically male. That doesn't mean that anything about me is male, except that I was designated that way by a doctor, and therefore that's how people treated me and how I thought of myself for a very long time. But none of that was necessarily accurate because it turns out I'm actually a woman, and I always have been. And again, same thing for trans men, designated female at birth. all that good stuff. Yeah. And honestly, I think that about sums up the basic points of how we're going to talk about this idea of trans people and biological sex. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about. I'm going to try to make some more of these videos soon. But for now, hopefully that's a good place to get started. And like I said, please contact me. I believe you can find my email somewhere on my YouTube channel. And you can certainly send me, you can certainly comment, and I will see it. And I will know that you were interested in talking further, and I'll be happy to do so. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. Have a great day. Bye.